Great. Please welcome Ella Hunt. Thanks everyone so much for bearing with that short delay. So excited to have Ella here from the show. Congratulations on Apple TV Plus launching today.
Thank you very much. Is this working? Is this on?
Yeah, you just got
Great. Just checking.
I wanted to start by asking you a little bit about how Elena pitched you the show and those first conversations that you had with her when you considered taking the part.
So for me, it wasn't very much of a consideration taking the part. I read the script and was like, I have to do this. And I'd only been sent the first script, but the tone or the concept felt so clear and exciting that I was like, this is something I want to do, because as an actor, you crave working on things that are pushing boundaries and are innovative. And so, yeah, that felt clear from the first time I read it. And then I remember having a phone conversation with her and being like, where does this go? I have no idea what happens to this character. And she talked me through some of Sue and Emily's storyline and what she was going to go through and what she was possibly going to go through in seasons to come, because Sue actually becomes this incredible socialite, which was a fun thing to know about her, but so not be playing in this season. So yeah, I signed up with the knowledge that she had a lot of places to go.
Did you have more of the scripts than just the first one once you went into production, or were you having to kind of navigate
that was actually an amazing thing about working on this show, is that this show has been Elena's love child for about 6 years, and so she had all 10 episodes written, which meant that I was able to prepare the whole arc, as opposed to going, I'm gonna try and wing this, and hopefully this character is the same person in episode 3 as she is in episode 1.
And how much of a historical dig on Sue and who she was in reality did you find yourself wanting to do?
I went down such a wormhole. I read everything there was to read, but I also wanted to trust in Elena's writing and think about the woman that she would be in today's society, because that was such a big thing that Elena wanted to do, was to capture characters that were relatable in our time as well as 1850. So I wanted to trust in her writing in that respect. But I read a lot of the poetry. I looked into female friendships in the 1800s, which is fascinating. Women were actively encouraged to form almost romantic bonds with their best friends, because they actually shared such grueling, hard lives that their friendships were their escapism, which was fascinating to learn.
Had you had much familiarity with Emily Dickinson's writing before that, or was that something new for you to discover?
So I don't know whether you had this as a Brit as well, but Emily Dickinson wasn't on my school syllabus. I didn't learn about her. And so, same? Yeah. Okay, we don't learn about her. We learn about Alfred Lord Tennyson. So she was totally new to me and such a thrill to discover. And I think I actually feel pretty privileged not to have gone into the project with this like school's literature teaching of her as this recluse who never left her room and was kind of dowdy and strange. I'm pleased to have come into the project with the perspective of her as a radical, incredible writer.
And I love the relationship that Sue has, not just with Emily, obviously, which we'll talk about a little bit more, but with the entire family. So how did you think about how you were going to play the chemistry with each different family member, down to her other sister and her mother and her father as well?
I mean, the cast make it so easy because they're all incredible and they bring such energy to their characters that actually... honestly, I didn't think about it enough before we went into shooting, how my relationships were going to be with say, Lavinia's character. But it did feel like we discovered those pretty quickly. But I think the big thing for me, especially when I first started shooting, was that Sue is kind of the straight guy, and her comedy is about her being the straight guy. And I certainly, for the first couple of weeks of shooting, went, am I in a different show to everyone else? But I just had to like slowly trust in that and trust that everyone was helping me be comedic in my straightness. But yeah, it was great fun discovering and playing and actually being open to just seeing what happens with the other characters.
And was that important for you, playing the straightness? Because there's so much great comedy about her being an orphan and her entire family dying.
Yeah. I just had to be really sad, basically, which I love doing so much.
And I like the way that the show very quickly introduces us to other aspects of Emily and Sue's relationship and the romantic side of it. How did you guys decide how you wanted to play that off and how you wanted to tease that out for audiences as the episodes go on?
We just trusted Elena's writing. I'm sorry to keep going back to that, but her scripts were so carefully and meticulously written. And David Gordon Green was especially amazing helping us navigate and initiate that relationship, because he created this atmosphere of like safety and fun at the same time. And there were moments where he encouraged one thing, and there were moments where he encouraged another, and it became less about a story of sexuality and much more about a story of intimacy between two people, like a discovery of intimacy. And when we got round to shooting, there's a scene at the end of episode 2, which is an intimate scene. And I had been a little bit nervous before going into shooting it, and he was like, I want to do shots on your feet touching and the way that your hand goes across Hayley's clavicle. I want it to be about an exploration of intimacy. I don't think of it as a sex scene. And that's just one example of what a beautiful, fine touch he was giving to that relationship. So I think that set us off in a really nice way.
That's really amazing. And speaking of David Gordon Green, you also have such other great directors on the show, like Lynn Shelton and Stacey Passon, who've all straddled between television and independent cinema. How did you go about navigating? Because you're building a relationship not just with one filmmaker, but with multiple people for the whole show.
It's certainly a leap of faith. I had never, I'd shot a TV show, a popular TV show in the UK, but I wasn't playing such an important role. So it didn't feel like such a challenge to trust so many different people. But I think they're all such incredible directors in their own right, and all brought such different things to the project. And I think once I'd settled in and relaxed into, okay, we're going to have a new person attacking these characters every 3 weeks. Once I'd settled into that, it was quite fun to know that they would all be bringing out different parts of the character, and that actually we'd get to the end of the season and feel like all of our characters were much more three-dimensional people possibly than they could have been with one director.
What were some of the nuances of the character of Sue that you discovered as you were shooting that you maybe necessarily hadn't found when you were first reading the scripts?
Oh, golly. I'm trying to think. It's so funny going back to her now. I guess thinking about her journey as one of somebody who she's gone through so much loss that she actually doesn't know how to want things for herself. And I think by the time we'd got to kind of episode 8 or 9, I sort of felt like her arc was more about discovering that how to want things and to feel like she can ask for the things that she needs. And that was really fun to discover slowly. I was so, at the beginning, so just focused on playing the straight guy and playing the orphan and playing the lost that I hadn't really thought about what her journey was necessarily. But yeah, it was fun to slowly discover that. I'd never had that with a project where I learnt with the character.
There's also such an interesting physicality to this character, whether it's just the way that you carry yourself in the costumes, but also the confidence that she exudes in every motion. So how did you think about that for yourself as a performer?
Good question. Gosh, performing questions. I'm an actor that really has no process. I like to try loads of different things and also to be instinctive, so it's quite difficult to answer a physicality question. So I'd certainly say that our corsets really helped us with our physicality or hindered us. It's really amazing to think about women in that time and the kind of hardy jobs that they were doing in these entrapment devices. But with Sue, I sort of, and I think the fun of this show is, yeah, we're set in 1850, but Elena wanted it to feel contemporary. So actually, there was a lot of me going, okay, I'm in a corset, but I can actually slouch here. I'm allowed to play my like loss and hurting in a way that I probably wouldn't have if it was just a straight-laced 1850s show.
And she brings so many of those modern day elements in, especially with the music, with like Billie Eilish on the soundtrack. And how much of that did you know was going to go into the show when you were shooting?
It was amazing how clear Elena's scripts were about what she wanted to achieve. So all of the songs that were in the original scripts, or almost all of the songs that were in the original scripts have ended up in the show, which is, I mean, that's a testament to Apple as well, that we were able to have those incredible songs in the show. But yeah, it was great fun to know what was going to be going on behind us. I'm somebody who uses music to prepare. Like, I made a Sue playlist. Music, I listen to it before every take. So to know what's going to be being played for the audience is really nice for me, I find.
I think character-wise as well, for Sue and Emily and all of the female characters, it really showcases the limitations that women experienced at that time. Was there anything that was really surprising to you to learn about what some of those limitations were in society that you hadn't known about before?
I think in a more general speaking way, I didn't realize just what tough lives they led, or just how much of the day was spent cleaning and cooking and trying to keep the house warm. And the walk to fetch the water, because there was no running water, was a 3-mile walk. And you're walking in these like 8 layers of skirt and a corset. It's crazy what they were going through daily. So thinking of how tough and kind of sad their lives were was an interesting thing. And the discovery of how important their female friendships were because of that, I found a really special thing to think about.
And I saw you posting something online about how you and Haley shot the scene in the second episode, which you guys haven't seen, but they basically go out passing as men for the day to go into a space that they've been told they can't go to, and that you actually filmed that on the day that Christine Blasi Ford gave her testimony. So what did it mean to be on a set shooting a scene like that for a show with such great feminist themes?
I love the saying, empowered women empower women. I came onto the set that day and I just moved to America, so I wasn't really aware of the American politics system, but had seen this Christine Blasey Ford stuff on my Twitter and had gone to look up who she was or what was going on, and there were so many strange articles that I couldn't find out just like what was going on. So I came up to Elena before we shot the scene and was like, I'm sorry, but please can you sit me down and tell me who Christine Blasey Ford is? So she sat me down 10 minutes before we shot that scene and told me, and it felt so heavy to then go shoot this scene where we're cross-dressing as men so that we can sneak into a lecture to learn because we want to be studying. But yeah, it's amazing to be part of a show that is so inclusive and that is talking about issues that we struggle with today through rediscovering a historical figure. Yeah, it's an amazing thing to be a part of in that respect.
Was there a lot of gender diversity behind the camera as well amongst the crew as well?
Yeah, massively. I feel like we're a pretty 50-50 set. It's never stuck out to me that there were too many men in the room or too many women. It's felt very even, and I think that also for me comes from just having a badass female showrunner. Like, Elena is everywhere, always. So you never feel like you're alone.
And you also have Haley Steinfeld as an executive producer on the show, as well as just your co-star for a lot of scenes. What does that give you as a cast member to have someone that you're acting against also involved in some of the creative decisions?
It was so empowering to watch Haley produce and star. And there was so many times where she came up to us as cast members and wanted to know how we were feeling and wanted to check that we were happy and getting along with the job well. She was so considerate and caring, as well as such great fun to play with. Yeah.
And I feel like actors are so much the nucleus of a film set and really help set the tone. How do you like to walk onto set and approach your work and your craft to really build that camaraderie with everyone around you?
I love filmmaking because I think it's the most collaborative of all the art forms, and so to me it really matters everyone else on set, and it matters to know everyone's name and to be able to have a conversation with our lovely sound guy or the person behind the camera and feel like we're in it together, and to feel like we're helping each other, because if we're all able to discuss freely, I feel like we'll make the best thing possible. So that's kind of how I like to go into things, is just feeling like everybody has equal weight in making the thing special.
I wanted to ask you, that is really wonderful, thank you for your applause there. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your work in music as well, and how that kind of fulfills you differently in a creative way, but also if there's any ways in which that's also informed your approach as an actor.
Yeah, nice question. I find as an actor that there are so many times where you're waiting for the phone to ring, and I have so much like going on in my head and my like creative gut that I just feel like I have to do something with it. And music has pretty much from day one always been been my immediate outlet in a way that acting just can't be, because you need a company of people. I mean, I love reading scripts. I love doing that on my own, but yeah, there's a different kind of validation that comes from being able to sit down at my piano and make something that's immediately fulfilling. Yeah. So music has always been that for me. I guess I think music and acting are both ways of telling stories. So yeah, I guess all of the training and writing and sitting and thinking about how I tell a story musically impacts how I tell a story through acting, but I never think of it too specifically.
Yeah. And when you were on Cold Feet, which you were on for a couple of seasons back in the UK, kind of how did that start to challenge you in a really unique way, that you were not just playing this character once, but revisiting it over a longer period of time?
I mean, with that show, I was playing such a small character. It was much more about just watching the older actors work, just learning how you do it. So for me, it was just a thrill to come back. I did 2 seasons of Cold Feet. It was just a thrill to come back and see how tenacious they all were, and just watching them be good at what they do and trying to sap up as much of that as possible. Yeah.
And speaking of that as well, one of your earlier film experiences was on a film with Sir Ben Kingsley and Gillian Anderson when you were 15.
Robot Overlords.
And what were some of the things that you learned from at that point in your career, just watching the way that they would work on set every day?
It was amazing watching Sir Ben specifically. He is more generous when the camera is off him than he is when the camera is on him. That was awesome to watch and go, okay, I can enjoy being this for the person I'm acting with. So I certainly have taken that one with me. That's great fun to know, because there's so much when I'm finding that there's so much when the camera is in front of you that's technical that you kind of can't let loose in the same way as you can sometimes when the camera is off you and you know that you're just giving it to someone so that they can enjoy responding. So he was amazing with that, but they were both incredible people to watch and again, just sap up from.
And obviously one of the things as an actor that you can never avoid is auditioning. So I'm curious if there's anything that you've kind of done for yourself to feel grounded and feel confident when you walk into one of those rooms.
I actually enjoy auditions. Yeah, I know. So I have great parents. My parents are both artists, and when I started acting, I was pretty young. I was randomly spotted in a school production of The Mikado. I was playing Katisha. I was wearing a fat suit. And I had been begging for an agent for a while because my mum had been an actress. And she just said, when the time is right, an agent will find you, thinking that I would be this age. But because I got into it so young, my parents were like, if you're going to do it, you have to love all parts of the process. It cannot be about the validation of when the film that you might do comes out. It's got to be about meeting that casting director and that trip up to London to do that audition and you messing up your lines and feeling silly afterwards. All of that has to be fun. And I feel really blessed to be able to go into it with that perspective.
That is amazing. You're right. I was also reading a story about when you were auditioning for Anna and the Apocalypse that the casting director actually kind of came to you and gave you a really...
That was insane. Okay, so Sophie Holland is a wonderful British casting director. I love her to bits. And she's known me since I was pretty young. I think I did my first audition for her when I was 14. And she was somebody's assistant at the time. And she's now like very much on her own, doing her own thing. And she got me in for Anna. And I was a little underprepared because I was feeling cocky about the role. I was like, I got this down. She sings, she fights zombies, I've got this down. And so I hadn't prepared the emotional last scene that they'd sent me to do. And so we did the whole audition, I did my song, we did the first 2 scenes, and she was like, this is going great, this is feeling really good. And it's nice when you can when you feel like your friend, the casting director, getting excited too. And then we went for the last scene, and I just didn't do a good job. And she turned the camera off, and she leant forward to me, and she went, "Look, Ella, you will get this job if you focus and actually play this scene like your dad has just died. And so I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and then you're going to do the scene." Which was the most amazing thing, to have a casting director just like lay it out flat for you. And I did the scene. I think it went well. I got the part. Thanks.
How has that specific note for that scene, is that something that's played in your head at other points in your career since?
Definitely. Like, never go in underprepared, which is tricky because sometimes it's like pilot season. You've got 10 things that you're going in for. Sometimes it's just impossible. But I certainly think whenever I can, I go in as prepared as possible. And for me, I don't like having my pages in my hand because I immediately feel like I'm acting if I have a page in my hand. But yeah, it's definitely taught me that for me to feel good about something, I need to go in as prepared as possible.
And when you're doing a project like when you're in Les Miserables, how do you kind of set about approaching such a well-known text and feeling like you're bringing something new to it?
Well, I was 13 when we were doing Les Miserables, and I was just a background character, essentially. So I was just excited to be on a huge set. It was at Pinewood. They'd done these incredible French streets. It was like, where am I? This is insane. I don't think I actually did a very good job on the day that we were shooting that, because I was just, my eyes were out on stalks. So I'm very glad that I started when I did, in some senses, because I got to be crap without people watching.
And kind of going back to Dickinson a little bit, what would you say, looking back on the experience of shooting the first season, was the most challenging scene for you to overcome?
Oh gosh, I think what I've learned from shooting the first season of Dickinson is the privilege of having all 10 episodes meant that there were some scenes that I was kind of gunning towards and thinking about and going, we're getting to that big scene where Sue finally expresses her fear about one specific thing. I'm not going to spoil it. And I'd overthought that scene. And we got round to it, and by the end of shooting it, I was proud of what we'd done. I really trusted Stacey, our director, for that episode, and I was pleased with it. But when I came to watching it, I was actually like, this actually isn't the most important scene in my character's arc. The most important scene is a 20-second scene that holds on the back of my neck while I'm breathing and terrified. That, or at least that, to me, I watched that and was like, oh, that's good. That says so much more than that scene where I'm like sobbing and terrified and overly talking about a thing. So I think I've learnt from shooting the first season that actually to put equal weight in all moments of the character's journey.
And what aspects of Sue and the story overall are you most excited to revisit diving into season 2?
If we dive into season 2, I will be excited to discover a new Sue, because she is now married. So, I mean, stay tuned. We'll keep our fingers crossed and we'll see.
Amazing. Congratulations on the first season. Can't wait to watch the second. Thank you so much for all coming out tonight.